A single father's resilience. Thomas and his wife, Rachel, had been married for over a decade and had 4 beautiful children together. They seemed to have the perfect family, but beneath the surface, their relationship was struggling. Rachel had become increasingly unhappy and felt unfulfilled, leading to constant arguments and tension in the home. The unraveling of a marriage. Thomas and Rachel's marriage began to fray at the edges when Rachel started to feel unfulfilled and restless. She had given up her career to raise their children, and as they grew older, she felt like she was losing her sense of purpose. Thomas, who was busy with his own career, didn't notice the subtle changes in Rachel's behavior and mood. Rachel tried to fill the void by taking up hobbies and volunteering, but nothing seemed to give her the satisfaction she craved. She began to feel like she was just going through the motions of life, without any real sense of direction or passion. She felt like she was disappearing as an individual, and her identity was solely tied to being a wife and mother. Thomas, on the other hand, was content with their life and didn't see the need for change. He was focused on providing for his family and didn't notice Rachel's growing discontent. He assumed that she was happy with their life, just like he was. The tension between them grew as Rachel's frustration and resentment increased. She felt like Thomas wasn't listening to her, didn't understand her, and wasn't supporting her dreams. Thomas, in turn, felt like Rachel was being ungrateful and didn't appreciate all that he did for their family. The argument started small but escalated over time. Rachel felt like Thomas was suffocating her, and Thomas felt like Rachel was being unreasonable. They stopped communicating effectively, and their conversations became heated and hurtful. Rachel began to feel like she was living in a prison, trapped in a life that wasn't hers. She felt like she was losing herself, and she didn't know how to escape. She started to distance herself from Thomas and the children, spending more time alone and away from the family. Thomas was oblivious to the depth of Rachel's pain and felt like she was just going through a phase. He didn't realize that their marriage was on the brink of collapse. One day, without warning, Rachel packed her bags and left, leaving Thomas with their 4 children, aged 8 to 14. Thomas was devastated and felt abandoned, not just by his wife but also by the mother of his children. The initial days were chaotic and overwhelming. Thomas struggled to manage the household chores, cook meals, and take care of the children's needs alone. He felt like he was drowning in responsibilities, and the grief of his failed marriage weighed heavily on him. The children, sensing their father's distress, became anxious and acting out. They missed their mother dearly and didn't understand why she had left. Thomas tried his best to reassure them, but he was struggling to come to terms with the situation himself. Thomas, still reeling from Rachel's departure, sat his children down to explain the situation. With a heavy heart, he said, "Kids, Mommy and I have some problems we need to work on. She's going to be living somewhere else for a while, but that doesn't mean she doesn't love you anymore. She'll always be your mom, and she'll always love you. We'll both always love you, no matter what happens between us." He hugged them tight, trying to reassure them that everything would be okay. But as he looked into their worried faces, he knew that this was just the beginning of a long and difficult journey for all of them. As the weeks went by, Thomas faced numerous challenges. He had to learn to cook, clean, and manage the household budget alone. He had to become the sole provider, caregiver, and emotional support for his children. He felt like he was losing himself in the process, but he refused to give up. With the help of his family and friends, Thomas slowly began to cope with his new reality. He joined a support group for single parents, which provided him with a sense of community and understanding. He learned to prioritize self-care, taking short breaks and engaging in activities that brought him joy, like playing music and reading. Thomas also discovered his own strength and resilience. He learned to be patient, kind, and compassionate with himself and his children. He created a routine that worked for them, and they began to feel more secure and stable. A It was a sunny Tuesday morning. Thomas, a single father, was getting his 4 children ready for school. Thomas has been raising their children alone since his wife left. As he made breakfast for the children, he thought about how much his life had changed. He used to be a successful businessman, but after his wife left, he had to put his career on hold to take care of the children. The children, aged 8 to 14, were a handful, but Thomas loved them dearly. He made sure they had everything they needed, even if it meant sacrificing his own comfort. As they finished breakfast, Thomas helped them with their homework and made sure they had their school materials. He then drove them to school, dropping them off just in time for their first class. After dropping off the boys, Thomas headed to his small shop, where he sold clothes and accessories. It wasn't a lucrative business, but it was enough to put food on the table. As the day went on, Thomas received a call from the school, informing him that his younger son, Ton, was feeling unwell. Thomas rushed to the school and took Ton to the hospital, where he was diagnosed with malaria. Thomas spent the rest of the day taking care of Ton, making sure he got his medication and plenty of rest. As the sun began to set, Thomas realized that being a single father was tough, but it was worth it to see his boys happy and healthy. As they sat down for dinner, Thomas's oldest son, Femi, asked him how he managed to do it all alone. Thomas smiled and said, "It's not easy, but I do it for you boys. You are my everything." The boys nodded in understanding, and Thomas knew that they appreciated everything he did for them. As they finished dinner and began to clear the table, Thomas felt a sense of pride and fulfillment. Being a single father was challenging, but it was also the most rewarding thing he had ever done. As time passed, Thomas and his children grew closer, and their bond became unbreakable. They learned to rely on each other and support one another through the tough times. Thomas realized that being a single father wasn't a limitation, but an opportunity to be the best version of himself for his children. Rachel's journey, a search for love and fulfillment. After leaving her marriage, Rachel threw herself into her career, determined to succeed and prove to herself that she was capable of living independently. She worked tirelessly, taking on new projects and responsibilities, and her hard work paid off. She rose through the ranks, becoming a respected and accomplished professional in her field. However, despite her success, Rachel couldn't shake off the feeling of emptiness and loneliness. She had achieved her career goals, but her personal life was lacking. She longed for love, connection, and companionship, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't seem to find it. Rachel went on dates, attended social events, and even tried online dating, but nothing seemed to stick. She felt like she was constantly searching for someone who understood her, someone who appreciated her for who she was, but it seemed like an impossible task. As the years went by, Rachel began to feel like she was losing hope. She wondered if she was destined to be alone, if she had missed her chance at true love. She felt like she had sacrificed her personal life for her career, and now it was too late to turn back the clock. Despite her doubts and fears, Rachel refused to give up. She continued to put herself out there, to take risks, and to believe that love was possible. As Rachel continued to put herself out there, she began to realize that she was holding onto a ghost. She was comparing every potential partner to Thomas, her ex-husband. No one measured up to the standard he had set, and she found herself constantly disappointed. She began to see that her longing for love was tangled up with her nostalgia for the past. She was holding on to the memories of her marriage, rather than embracing the present. Rachel realized that she needed to let go of the past and stop comparing everyone to Thomas. With this newfound awareness, Rachel took a step back and reassessed her approach to dating. She started focusing on getting to know people for who they were, rather than trying to find someone who fit the mold of her ex-husband. She began to appreciate the unique qualities and strengths of each person she met. She learned to prioritize self-care, to focus on her own happiness, and to cultivate meaningful relationships with friends and family. The without her, and she had missed out on precious moments in their lives. She knew she couldn't turn back the clock, but she wanted to reconnect with them, to be a part of their lives again. With a mix of emotions, Rachel reached out to Thomas, asking to see their children. She was nervous about his response, knowing that he might still have a resentment towards her. Thomas was taken aback by Rachel's request.